It doesn't matter if you're a car fanatic, a straight-up gearhead, or just a regular Joe. Everyone remembers their very first car. After years of only dreaming about it, the exhilaration and freedom of finally getting behind the wheel of your own car is hard to beat. And if you happen to be a car enthusiast, chances are you have an extra special place in your heart for your first sports car. And while we didn't realize it beforehand, Nate Fish and I happen to share a very specific bond when it comes to our first sports cars. Each of us solidified our love of cars behind the wheel of a Nissan Z. It's been a number of years since any of us have been behind the wheel of our own Z car, but that's all about to change, as Nissan was gracious enough to dig into their own private collection to give us the chance for a reunion of sorts. All three of us are about to take a version of our very own first sports car for a trip down memory lane. Nate behind the wheel of the 50th anniversary edition of the 1984 300ZX. Me in the still striking 1990 Nissan 300ZX Game Changer. And Fish couldn't help but smile in the 2009 370Z. Of course, our memories of these Z cars are quite fond, but is all that just a nostalgic haze? Or will these Z cars actually live up to our expectations? We're about to find out.
I'm sitting here in the Nissan 300ZX. This is the anniversary edition. It's 1984. When I was a kid, just before I was actually able to drive, this was my very first car. I never even got to drive it. Sit in our barn as I waited to get old enough to get my license. And while I was out there, it just kind of rotted away. The barn wasn't sealed. But I remember sitting out there day after day, and I'd make car noises and pretend like I was driving it. It was a manual transmission car. I didn't get my hands on the Z car until a bit later on in life. I did end up buying one, but didn't have the money for a turbo at the time. And so I just picked up the naturally aspirated 5-speed. It's a fun car. Not very quick by today's standards. This one with the turbo, the anniversary edition, is even slower thanks to the automatic. At least it feels slower. But I don't even care. Everything about this car just makes me reminisce about the old one.
So 1989, Nissan comes out with the 300ZX update. When this car came out, it changed the game. 222 horsepower from a 3-liter naturally aspirated 6-cylinder. Or you could get this dog. Twin Garrett turbochargers and intercoolers, pushing out 300 horsepower. This thing stole my heart. One test drive and this field of view across the whole front here. The power it could put down, a 5-second 0 to 60 time in 1990. By today's standards, not the quickest car in the world, but back then.
My first sports car, a 2009 370Z. It's bringing me back. You have to realize I've not driven one of these in several years. It makes you smile. It's nice to hear 6 cylinders. It's nice to know that I'm not going to blow the thing up. It's a reliable car. That engine, this drivetrain, it's proven itself over the years. The old ones have nostalgia. The old ones had technology for their day. This one is still fine, all right? I'm not saying it's the sharpest, best sports car. Ask people with the Miata. Is it the fastest? Nope. Is it the best handling? Nope. Do they love them? Yes. That can be like Z people too.
So when I was younger, I didn't particularly care for a digital dashboard. If a car had a digital dash, especially for the speedometer or the tachometer, I hated it. I hated it. I loved the analog gauges. Now that I'm a little older and I'm looking back at this vehicle with nostalgia, it's so awesome to see the digital dash in it. You have separated little boxes for each individual LCD display. The speedometer goes up. It does present you with a little game to try and go just a little faster. See how much you can squeeze out. Can I get that bar all the way to the end? It just makes it fun to interact with the display on it. It really does. The seats are something you find in a luxury car back then. They're amazingly comfortable. I kind of sink into them. But it's a Z car. It's also got another really cool feature, the body sonic amplifier. And when this first came out, it wasn't met with great reception, right? Oh, you're faking the noise, because it vibrates the seat as the bass tone's hitting the car. The nice side effect of that is you can feel like you've got the music cranked, like you're there in the concert theater, and every time the bass kicks, you feel it in the seat without having to turn the radio up so loud that the speakers are distorting and you can't hear hardly anything around you. It's fantastic.
ZX in the late 80s, computer technology, it had everything all over the place, like all this different, it's like an Atari game system, all through the dash, digital dash, seats that shake when you turn on the music. Goofy stuff, right? This car, the Z32, is all about the driver. This is a driver-centric cockpit. You've got HVAC controls right on the side of the gauges, cruise control and lights on the other side, literally right on the instrument binnacle. Not reaching around on stalks or over on the center dash pushing buttons. Everything about this car was cool. It was comfortable, is comfortable, still today. It feels a little heavy. 3,200 pounds is no lightweight, but everything is just here. It's all about the driver, and that's what made this car so special.
Up next on Auto Exotica, we resume our trip down memory lane in our very first Nissan Z sports car.
When you have a lot of experience with cars, you just start getting why each one is built. The plain Jane ones were designed for people who just want to go from point A to point B. This one wants you to get there, but have a lot more fun doing it. Some people are saying it's getting long in the tooth, but I guess it depends on what you mean long in the tooth is. You're saying the chassis is getting old. We have to think about what a Z car is and what this latest iteration has been. The price for what you got and how this thing looks was amazing. And the performance. I mean, for 2009, having 332 horsepower, that was nice. And think about what you can do with this. Think about what you can do with that platform up front. The VQ37 VHR. HR? High revving. But let's face it, it doesn't like to rev, let's say, over 6,000 RPM. That's just what you feel. I'm not saying like it just falls flat on its face. That's not what I mean. It just feels like the whole car is going to vibrate itself apart. Okay, that's what I'm saying. Don't worry, it's not though. This engine is bulletproof. Everyone knows the VQ series of motors from Nissan, bulletproof.
It's noisy, it rattles, it makes a nice whooshing sound in the turbo as you accelerate. It sounds like a rocket ship. You feel when you hear that, pushes you back in a seat, you feel like you're gonna go from 0 to 60 in like 3-4 seconds. Of course you don't. It takes a bit of time to get there. This isn't a car I really feel the need to drive fast anyway. I can enjoy it just cruising around, even though it's a sports car.
Talk about handling. This thing handles really well. It's not Gorilla Glue on the tarmac, but it's a playful chassis, even though it's a little portly. Not the fastest car in the world. Who cares? The steering gives great feedback. Not every little nuance in the road, but it's really positive steering. The way it just rolls through these corners, I mean, it just settles right in, doesn't get upset at all. It's a great car. I love it.
It's classic, from the one that Nate had to Jennifer, the one that she had. And each one is so different, but they do the same mission. Nissan needs to not even think about getting rid of the Z car. You can't, because it gives people like me that were in my financial position the chance to own something that's fun, to own something that they can have, and it can be fairly new, but it's not going to destroy your pocketbook. For what it is, okay, go, we're ready. I used to think this thing was so fast.
This is the one, the 300ZX, that really got me started down the road to wanting to have actually owned my own and actually cared about the performance of it, cared about the feeling you got when you sat behind the wheel. Not worried, you know, what it looked like. I didn't care about that at all back then. It did look cool, but man, once you sat inside it, everything around you, it's awesome. Awesome.
I know everybody's sort of got that those one or two cars that you just wish you would have bought or wish you would have kept. For me, the Z32 Nissan 300ZX Turbo is definitely that car. It's the one car that really lit the fire for automotive enthusiasm. Yeah, the supercars were fantastic, but this is attainable, this is reachable. And that's really what the Z car has always been about.
It sure wasn't easy to hand the keys to these beauties back. They clearly continue to hold a very special place in each of our hearts. And although the ride couldn't last forever, we're more than grateful to Nissan for giving us the chance to take that trip down memory lane. Next on Auto Exotica, we're back at the Nissan collection, diving deeper into the history of the Z car brand as Nate and Fish test drive editions of the Z cars that came before their own. Still to come on Auto Exotica, we're back at the Nissan Museum, diving deeper into the history of the Z car as Nate and Fish head out in the predecessors to their very own first Z. Previously on Auto Exotica, Nate, Fish, and I took a trip down memory lane in editions of our very own first sports cars. Nissan opened the doors to their collection and handed over the keys to 3 of their very own cars: the 1984 300ZX, the 1990 300ZX, and the 2009 370Z. That's right, all 3 of our very own first sports cars just so happen to be Z cars. If it's not clear by now, let it be known that Nate, Fish, and I definitely consider ourselves as fans of Nissan's Z. We simply love Z cars. Sure, fond memories of our first sports cars are certainly a factor, but as any car enthusiast can attest, there's much more to the Z car than simple nostalgia. One of the most influential sports cars in history, the Z car made its first appearance in the late 1960s as the Datsun 240Z, though in Japan it was called the Nissan Fairlady Z. It was a lightweight, powerful, yet affordable alternative to the competition of its day. Throughout its history, the Z has teetered between its performance-based roots, like the updated 300ZX, and the technology and luxury of grand touring, as found in the original 300ZX and the more recent 350Z. Yet the core principle of the Z Cars DNA has remained firmly intact since day one. This has always been a fun sports car for the masses. In an effort to learn a bit more about the lineage of the Z, we returned to Nissan's collection to take editions of the Z Cars that preceded our very own first sports cars for a comparative drive. Nate in the classic Nissan 280Z, and Fish in the more contemporary 350Z. While I was absolutely thrilled to get behind the wheel in the legendary 240Z, the car that started it all, it clearly wasn't meant to be. As soon as we got on location, the car broke down. And yes, it was our fault. So while I sulked on the side of the road, Nate and Fish peeled away to enjoy the cars Nissan provided them.
The 350Z. As an owner of the 370Z, I think this is the more grown-up car. This was the car for the more mature sports car owner because it's a little bit heavier, tipping the scales a little bit over 3,400 pounds. Of course, it's wider, but what you notice in here, the 350Z, the ride is not terrible. It's actually pretty livable in here. I could drive this thing all day for hours and hours on end and feel fine, completely fine by the end of the day.
The 280 does some things to make it kind of feel fast, right? So if I drop down a gear here, you should be able to see it. So I'm in second gear. We're gonna pull up. This is why we dropped down a second, because we gotta maintain the speed limit. Okay, we're about 4 grand. I let off the throttle, the car dips down, I step on the throttle, the rear end sinks back, you're pressed into the seat and accelerating all the way up to the speed limit of 40 miles an hour where we are. Yeah, so it's not fast at all. I wouldn't even call it quick, but it feels fast. And that still gives you some of the spirit of what a Z car is. But you also get a lot of creature comforts in here compared to the 240. You do have air conditioning, which is fantastic. AM, FM cassette player, all that kind of stuff. T-tops, which, I mean, how can you not like a car with T-tops? It's comfortable. And yeah, while it's not the quickest thing in the world, it's still fun.
They wanted 6 cylinders again because 4 cylinders just kind of wasn't reminiscent of a Z. This motor, the VQ35HR, they gave it just kind of a broader power band. And you know what? You can feel it. And you can actually feel that more down low, even compared to the 370Z. This has a broader power band. I can feel more power down low, and it just is a steady pull. I don't feel like this needs a supercharger, a turbocharger to just pull even from down low. I'm actually surprised because even though I owned a 370, I never drove a 350 until now. And I am shocked to see that people said, oh, we love the fact that the 370, it's lighter, it's smaller, it's more compact, it's going back to its sports car roots. Well, you know what? I guess it depends on who you are. Because if it were me, I really like this 350. And I probably would have kept my 370 even longer if it was this nice inside.
This is something I miss on new cars, right? The simple layout and design. I have super easy to find readouts. I have my voltage over here, says, okay, my battery's fine, I'm gonna make it on my way. Which also lets me know if my belt has gone, so I know if it's going to overheat before it does. That's super useful. The gasoline gauge is particularly cool. Not only does it give you full to empty in your normal sway, but it also gives you the very last little bit of your tank. It goes from 1/4 to 1/8 and gives you a bunch of little slats in between so you can see exactly how far you can try and push it before you need to get fuel.
The 350Z is a very livable Z. It has a lot of the creature comforts that a lot of you are probably looking for, but remember, We're going back into the early to mid to late 2000s, so don't get all excited with your Bluetooth streaming and apps on your thing. No apps on the thing. This particular one, though, has a touring package, so I have navigation with the DVD behind me. Yeah, Bose system, subwoofers right behind you. That's, I think, before the age that Nissan and Infiniti started putting them in the spare tire ring. Either way, it's fine. This isn't about stereo. This is about this. Just like any sporting car, once you hit the gas, any sort of little flaw just becomes its quirk, right? You can feel that it's heavier than the 370, but I don't care. If you can find one of these used and you like just kind of a sporting car, but you can go and do some errands with it, you can do that in this.
The 280 is a nice car, especially a nice throwback, but in its stock form, it leaves a bit to be desired, right? For its day, great car, but if I had money to spend now, which is where we are in time, and I had a choice between the 240 or the 260 or the 280, the 300ZX, either version, by the way, I'd still go for the 240. I think that Nissan and Datsun nailed the car the best so far as handling characteristics in the original version of the car.
While none of the Z cars we drove were perfect, it's hard to argue that Nissan has blessed the automotive world by unleashing the Z upon us. For those in search of a seriously fun sports car that won't break the bank, each iteration of the Z certainly has something to offer. And we all hope that Nissan will continue to update the Z for generations to come. It has been a far too influential car to let its glory fade to the pages of history.